Welcome, everybody. Um, as discussed, our session today is called Gamechanger and is all about helping you understand the Premier League front of shirt marketing opportunity for 26-27. It's certainly the biggest opportunity in sport marketing over the next 12 months. So I'm going to try and give it a brief overview and then I'll introduce the panel. Front of shirt sponsorship has become some of the most valuable inventory in world sports. Multiple case studies from people across multiple industries, including airlines like Emirates, Etihad, financial service companies like Standard Chartered Bank and AIA, and potentially most famously betting brands where since COVID, brands like Betano and Stake have used it to turbocharge their business. The marketplace has been pretty stable. 4 or 5 shirts a year have been traded over the last 10 years or so. But this summer, everything changes. Premier League's bringing new regulations and they will see betting companies banned from buying the front of shirt. And so this is creating a huge spike in supply. So rather than the 4 or 5 shirts traded per year, there's going to be 12 available this summer, which offers a great opportunity for a new generation of brands to come in and be the new face of the Premier League. With that in mind, let me introduce myself. I'm Matt House. I'm CEO and founder of SportQuake. And this is Mark Rowlings from Everton, who's the Chief Partnerships Officer, fresh from his heroics at Old Trafford on Monday nights. We've got Hannah Hill on the brand side from Axie. She's Sponsorship and Brand Director, and Axie have been a partner of Man City since 2020. And then we've got Becky Hampton, who is bravely here, even though she's ill and would rather be curled up in bed. And she's with Trade Nation, who have been the Villa Sleeve partner since 2023. So, Mark, fintech and trading brands already invest heavily in football. What most excites you about them coming in as a front of shirt partner at Everton?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I'd start with is I think with any partnership, what you're trying to do is ultimately create mutual value. So I think, first of all, and most importantly, that's for the partner. Secondly, that's for the football club. But third, also, I think it's for our fans. And I think if you achieve all of those things, ultimately you'll deliver a really successful long-term partnership. Specifically in relation to fintech, I think as a sector, it profiles as innovative, fast-moving, dynamic, and ultimately globally relevant. And I think that category profile for a football club is really exciting. Ultimately, our partners are an extension of our own marketing. So if we can find ways to collaborate through that activation to connect with mutual audiences, then that's a huge benefit to us. I think fintechs typically have a digital first mindset. Their audiences skew younger, more digitally native. And as a football club right now, that's an area where we're putting a lot of time, resources, energy, and ultimately investment into how we enhance our own digital touch points and connectivity with our fans. And again, ultimately, if we can have partners, like Becky and Hannah do with their respective rights holders who are trying to activate around mutual value and connect us to our fans in a deeper way, that's of great benefit to us. I think the other thing to say, and it's obvious, but it also provides our fans access to relevant products and services. And I think if we look at Becky and Hannah's examples, it's an ability to offer our fans access to products and services that ultimately enhance their own financial investments and trading journeys. So it speaks to that value exchange that I sort of referenced at the top of the call. And then the other thing I'd probably just mention, where I think it gets really exciting and a particular relevance to us as Everton at the moment, is the ways we can bring the digital experiences into the physical world. We've just opened our brand new shiny spaceship on the River Mersey, and it's got all the Wizzy technology, and that shows I know nothing about it, but we do have it. But having partners who can integrate their technology into that experience to enhance the match day and event day experience, whether it's through payments or frictionless technologies, or even just through activation, how partners can bring fans closer to their club, enhance experiences. So it's an area that really excites us in ways that we can really collaborate with brands on a deeper, meaningful level, actually below just the obvious value and visibility that a front of shirt position gets you.
That's a great answer. Thanks, Mark. Han, what first attracted Axie to the Premier League?
Well, at Axie, our ethos really is actually to try and do things differently. So it's quite an interesting question, because when we were looking for a sponsorship opportunity, we were actually desperately looking outside of football to try and see if we could do things slightly differently. However, we quite quickly realised that there's a reason why a lot of brands in our space partner with clubs in the Premier League. I think it's really important to understand your objectives. So for us, awareness was super, super key. Obviously, the Premier League is the most watched sports league in the world. So there's your awareness box kind of ticked. But also it really aligned with our demographics and our key market. So that was undeniable. Another reason for us to really, want to embark on a partnership with a large Premier League club. I think also shared ambitions and shared values. So Manchester City, obviously the biggest club in the world currently, ambitious, driven, really future thinking. And we like to think that we're in a similar position within our own space in the trading sector. And yeah, I think also just looking at the future, when we renewed our deal with Man City after 3 seasons, we really kind of doubled down on the localized approach. So partnering with CFG really allowed us to be able to localize our approach with the addition of Bahia, Girona, and our brand ambassador, John Stones, as well.
Cool, thank you. Becky, why the sleeve?
So for us, the sleeve was an interesting choice, just because we aren't one of the biggest, trading brokers out there. We are, I would say, a challenger brand. So for us, the awareness was really, really important. And being on the sleeve means that you're, in front of eyeballs, not just Villa fans, but you're also being seen by all your away fans. So whoever Villa's playing against, they're also seeing our brand and they're watching it on TV. The kind of global visibility is just huge. And I think that's something that you just don't necessarily get in a lot of other sports. And, the shirt, there's not much kind of space there. So you've only really got sleeve, front of shirt, maybe the back. But for us, the lack of clutter was something that was really important. But I also think with the sleeve and with just football in general, the trust element was something that we were really keen to kind of lean on. I know that our industry can be a little bit kind of tricky when it comes to trust. We know that that's a really big kind of barrier for a lot of people when they're looking at trading, they're looking at what company they want to trade with. Being able to trust them is really, really important, and to be able to align ourselves with a Premier League brand is huge, but also with the other sponsors is huge as well, which is why I think it's going to be a really interesting when that betting brands come off the front of shirt and we see lots of different industries coming in. It's going to be nice for us to align ourselves with some of those other industries that aren't betting and don't come with the kind of maybe negative associations that kind of that betting industry has.
That's a great insight. Thank you very much. Now, let's dig into what clubs offer and how trading and fintech brands evaluate, activate, and measure ROI. Mark, why is 26-27 so big for Everton specifically?
Well, I think clearly the voluntary ban on betting that we've all voted for is a seismic moment. Is the biggest buyer in the Premier League at the moment by some way, both probably by spend and share of voice. So I think it requires football clubs to, I think, really think imaginatively and differently about the value proposition how they're speaking to brands. So I think that's probably the first thing I'd say. But I think ultimately we still have a huge amount. It is still, I think, one of the premium real estates in global sport. And I think, I remember the glory days of sports sponsorship. I'm going to sort of show my age a little bit here, but in the 90s, I don't think you could think of Everton without thinking of NEC or Manchester United and Sharp. And I do sort of have a hope that I think we're going to return to those days a little bit. I think as an asset, and we've mentioned it a few times already, but clearly scale, the visibility that the asset provides you, in some ways, if you just set and forget it, it would deliver you value in that respect. And that's what we do see some betting brands do. But I think it's also important to remember that there is a scarcity to the asset. There's still only one of 20 opportunities to be on the front of a Premier League kit. I think that's easy to forget sometimes. And you talk about how Becky and Hannah have already said about how it can elevate your brand. I think that's really relevant. But ultimately, you also have an opportunity to become part of cultural relevance. All the fear, despair, joy, passion that the world's biggest sporting drama provides you every week. We had it in spades on Monday night. Thankfully, we came out on the right side of that. And apologies for any Liverpool fans in the audience, but when James Tarkowski volleyed in that 96-minute equaliser in the derby at Goodison Park, that clip was actually the world's most watched sports clip that week.
All right.
And our front of shirt partner, Stake, of course, were at the heart of all of that emotion.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it, a really special asset. I think Becky's mentioned the trust and credibility point, and that's something that we see in all of our partner metrics. Like almost instantaneously, you transfer the trust and credibility that, we're our 150th anniversary is next season. We're a founding member of the Premier League, a founding member of the Football League, a founding member of the Women's Super League, and you do gain instant access to that credibility, I think.
Beyond the logo, can you talk a bit about what rights you offer and what outcomes you offer to brands?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important to remember because clearly the front of shirt provides you unrivaled global scale, but below that, there's a huge amount of rights and benefits that will help a brand activate around their business outcomes and objectives. It could be access to talent to create content and storytelling. It could be access to club platforms owned and operated. It could be money can't buy experiences, tickets, hospitality. So one thing I'd probably say to any brand who was thinking about the asset is to be really consultative with your prospective partner and really try and find a partner that's flexible as well throughout the term. It's a bit cliche, but like the contract should go in the drawer and you should really try and work through how you create that mutual value. I think specifically giving an example, probably with our front of shirt partner Stake, different industry, of course, but profiles, a lot of similar ways. Trust is important, credibility is important, visibility is important. It's not all down to us, but I think across the last 5 years, Stake's journey's been incredible. 50x revenue increases, and actually sort of intangible benefit of being a partner of us, I think, is they're the first betting brand ever to take a naming rights position in Formula One. Whether they would have been able to do that without being able to first build that trust and credibility through us. So, I think it's a really special asset still in global sport.
That's great, Mark. Han, when we think back to 2020 and you were putting together this deal with City and you and Louis liked that, as a first-time spender, how did you then develop a value proposition that the board could get their head around to sign off a big budget?
Yeah, look, I think I mentioned it briefly before, but I think it all comes down to objectives. Why do you want to embark on a sponsorship? What is it you want it to achieve for you? What are your key markets? Who's your demographic? What is it you actually want to obtain with this sponsorship, and kind of work backwards from there? So for us, there was 3 real specific things. Awareness was one. Like I mentioned before, a sponsorship with a massive brand like Man City really allows us to generate awareness on a scale that we could only dream of otherwise. Also, working in a regulated space means that we don't have access to regular marketing channels in a lot of our key markets. So a partnership like this with Man City really allows us to market and generate visibility in markets that we would not otherwise have access to. And also importantly, I think, timing. So for us at the time, we were about to launch a new brand platform. We'd spent 12 months working on a really, really big rebrand, which was pivotal in our growth. So announcing this partnership was really a platform for us to also propel our new brand to the next level. So understanding all of those 3 objectives and then finding a partner that really worked for us to be able to deliver on those. It is a big commitment in terms of investment. So boards want to be sure that you're going to be able to deliver on the ROI that you're promised. And I think it's all about, just like Mark said, it's all about finding the right partner who you're positive can help you deliver on that.
And can you talk a bit about how you max impact on a tight budget? And I know that we've talked before about international audiences. 80% of the PL audience is non-UK, and also women's as well, and how much that's an interesting area.
Yeah, so look, budget-wise, we all know we don't have the budgets of Etihad, unfortunately. So we have to work a little bit smarter, and I think that's the key. It's not about having more money; it's about using the money that you have in a smart way. And there's a few ways I think that you can do that. I think really leveraging your assets. So making sure content that you're creating is used to the max, cutting it up, using cut downs, using different versions, maximizing your channels, all of those things that can really help your content live longer. I think it's also really, really important to sweat your rights holder. So don't just get the assets delivered to you, work with your rights holder to be able to really maximize them and get what you need from them. So for example, we've done a number of content strands with Man City. A lot of that is generated by them, funded by them. We partner it and we sponsor it. But collaborative working, I think, is really, really the way forward. And sweating those assets so that they work for you. And then to touch on your point around the women's team. So when we renewed after 3 seasons, we added the women's team to our portfolio as well as two clubs that I mentioned previously. The women's team has been really, really interesting, and I think is a huge, huge opportunity for brands within this space. So we know that the audience of the women's game is smaller, obviously, but much more financially astute, much more experienced when it comes to investing, trading, financial services. And actually, we've seen the results of that in some campaigns that we've run. So we've run similar campaigns across men's and women's football, and the women's has outperformed the men's time after time. So I think it's also really important to look at not just the size of the audience, but also, the type of audience that you're communicating to. And for us, I think that's a real opportunity, and for lots of brands within this space and the fintech space. Sorry.
Sorry, I cut you off. I was just going to say, Mark, do you have anything to add on women's based on how big it is within the club mix now?
I was just going to ask Hannah if she wanted to do a women's only deal, actually, but no, it's a real area of focus for all of the Premier League clubs that have WSL clubs at the moment. I think what we are seeing rings true with what Hannah says, in that it may be a smaller audience, but it engages in a different, more meaningful way. So I think if you can get your content right, or if you can get all your messaging right, then you have an opportunity to engage deeper with those audiences, which I think particularly fintech profiles really well for the reasons you said, is that they are more financially astute and they were more open-minded to thinking about investment. So it's an area where we're encouraging all of our partners to try and sort of broaden their marketing into. And actually, I'd say more and more we're seeing brands coming to us with the objective that they actually want to do that as well. So very, very rarely will we have any brands come to us now and say it's a men's only consideration.
Interesting. Becky, how has the Villa partnership evolved since launch?
So, at the very start of the partnership, it was very awareness focused for us. It was just getting our name out there. It was really focusing on the visibility. But I think a partnership doesn't work if it's just visibility. There needs to be, a lot more focus on really getting that sponsorship into the customer journey for us. So I think what we're shifting from now is from an awareness focused sponsorship into more kind of conversion. So we're going to be shifting it down that funnel, because at the end of the day, the measurement of what you want to do is all about how much money you're making, what is that sponsorship driving for you? Is it hitting those objectives that you set at the start? And I think for us, just making sure that we're integrating that sponsorship into every level of our customer journey. So we're using it in the CRM, we're using it in our sales team, we're kind of making sure that it's really it's not just this is our logo on a shirt. It's, you know, how can we educate the fans and how can we educate our customers about the sponsorship, but also about what we do and what we can offer. So it's using the sponsorship as a tool to educate rather than just have much more of a broad awareness piece.
I think you referred to, rather than a marketing asset, turning it into a company asset, something like this.
Yeah, so I think it's really important not to see sponsorship as just a marketing asset. It is an asset for the whole company. It should be used by all the different departments. You know, you can use it for HR to do lots of internal engagement. You can use it for your sales teams to kind of talk about Villa. You can use the hospitality. You can, like I said, use your CRM. You really need to make sure that it's being used across the entire kind of ecosystem of your business, because then it also feels like you're getting much more use out of it. And it feels like everyone in the company is behind it. And I think that's something that's really important, especially if you're trying to sell it into your execs. If you've got the buy-in of the whole company, it does kind of move from just being this very siloed marketing tool to a real kind of useful company tool.
That's great. Han, in your opinion, what's the number one thing fintech should be doing now if they're interested in a front of shirt opportunity for 26-27?
Yeah, look, again, I think it all comes back to knowing what it is you want to achieve. So setting clear objectives and then working to find a rights holder that's going to work for you. I think that's really, really important. And also having buy-in. So, you know, as Becky mentioned, it's not just a marketing asset having a sponsorship. It's a company investment, and it can, if used in the right way, it can really, really help you propel growth and deliver on those objectives. But for that to happen, you need to be really, really clear on what those objectives are.
That's great. Becky, what about you? One piece of practical advice that people should take away?
I would say don't just buy the logo, buy the team around the logo. So, you know, like Hannah said, you need to make sure that your values are aligned, but also if you have anything in your business that you maybe aren't necessarily so strong at, so let's say content creation, make sure that you're partnering with someone that has a really strong content, you know, creation capability, so that you can then utilize that as part of your sponsorship. You know, use their strengths to kind of bolster some of your weaknesses. And I think that's something that will really, really help in terms of building a sponsorship.
And Mark, what's the one key takeaway on why people should be talking to you about the front of shirt opportunity?
I think I describe it as a rare opportunity to be front and center in the world's biggest sports league, Sport and Drama. That ultimately, if you find the right partner and get the right asset mix, it has the potential to drive you exponential business growth and achieve ROI.
That's great, guys. Any questions from the audience for my panel?
Yes, a very important one, I believe, like what you mentioned about trust, Becky, you did. How do you leverage on brand awareness from acquiring those teams to actually build trust around your brand?
So this is something that we're actually working on at the moment, is once you've got those people in your ecosystem, how do you then continue with that trust? So I think for us, it's about the content that we're putting out. So once we've got them, once we can talk to them, we need to make sure that the content that we're putting out to them is really high quality, that's really educational. It's all about our brand messaging, making sure that, you know, you only get one chance really once they're there to really get your message across, that we are a trusted broker. And that's where we kind of talk to them about why we're better than everyone else. And it's just making sure that you're nurturing them in that journey. So like I said, that's why it's really important to have your content ready to go. You know, once they're there and once you've got them, you need to be targeting them very quickly. You don't just wait a couple of months and then they'll get a random email. You have to really kind of make sure that you've got a really strong CRM system set up to be able to target these people so that they do trust you and they think, oh, okay, they know what they're talking about.
I have a two-part question. The first one would be, how do you measure the awareness variable of the equation, not just the ROI and the conversion eventually? And also, what do you expect the impact to be in the World Cup coming up in the US come summer?
Do you want me to take the first part? Yeah. Yeah. So the awareness piece, I think there's a number of different ways in which you can measure that. And this is something that we get tasked with a lot. So we have a various number of metrics that we will use. Surveys are really important. So talking to your audience, we do 2 brand trackers a year internally at Axie, where we will survey our key markets and we'll ask them a variety of questions around how aware they are of not only us, but also our partnership. That's really important. Man City also do the same. So they will survey their own fan base, where we can gauge an understanding of how aware their fan base is of us. So kind of the other way around. We'll also measure things like web traffic, referred traffic through campaigns that we do. We'll look at social stats, social growth, social engagement, share of voice. There's a number of metrics that we use to be able to kind of measure awareness, and really it's the holistic approach of all of those together that allow us to sort of see growth. I think also it's important to note that awareness doesn't happen overnight. It's definitely it's a journey. You're not going to sign a sponsorship deal and then 6 weeks later see huge growth in your awareness. It's something that takes work, and also it's not just about slapping your logo on something either. I think like Becky said, it's about working with the rights holder to be able to figure out how you grow that awareness and the kind of the methods that you use to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really add much more to that, to be fair. But you mentioned Man City help you with the track, and we do the same with our partners. So, and across a range of different platforms. So we have a partner tracking survey we run quarterly. We track all of the awareness of our partners before they start, and we'll run the journey right through with them, assisting with our data and tools. It's another thing I'd say about finding the right partner to help you report internally, because that's really important for you guys, right? You need to show success. So. Yeah, we do a lot to assist our partners with that and invest in tools that do that. I think your second part of your question was on the World Cup. I think I'm Welsh, so I'm very much hoping I'll be over there still with the playoffs. But I think ultimately it's about having a credible place in football to talk about football. And I think we can't all be World Cup partners, right? It's very expensive. If you've got that budget, then good luck. Go spend it at Everton maybe. But I think you'd be able to talk credibly. I mean, we have England internationals, Jordan Pickford. It gives you an opportunity to talk to a football audience, and of course, we'll just see as we get towards the World Cup, interest it will naturally increase as we get up to that's the event. So you don't have to be a federation partner or a World Cup partner to be able to talk credibly. So I would say Premier League or other things give you a really good opportunity to do that.
Just on that, the Premier League's the biggest football product in the world, right? And so once people have enjoyed the World Cup this summer, they'll be back watching the Premier League in August. So it's a great space for that.
I think also just to say, so I think this is where ambassadorships come in as well. So you can really leverage your we have an ambassadorship with John Stones, so Man City player, but also England player. And although we're restricted in terms of how we reference the World Cup, we can allude to it through specific campaigns and content and narrative. So I think that's also a clever way in which you can kind of tie it in.
Great. Anything else? Okay. Just to summarize, I've got 5 key points. This resets a unique opportunity to be the new face of the Premier League. Chance to build on fertile ground. As we've heard from Becky and Hannah, trading brands are already monetizing. Clubs are very open and flexible and consultative. And that a robust planning process is key to success. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great show.